I am 84 years old, and these hands have carved enough wood to raise a cathedral. But in 1998, for 44 minutes, I was forced to lay down all my tools. I died in a cold hospital bed, and what I found on the other side shattered every earthly illusion I had spent a lifetime building. We fear death as if it were a door closing, but I am here to tell you it is the only one that truly opens. I saw the truth, that we are not judged by the monuments we build, but by the silent ripples of love we leave behind. I met him, not as a distant judge, but as the very definition of home. He showed me that the void we fear so much is in fact a womb of light, and that you are loved with a fierceness your mind cannot even begin to imagine. I have nothing left to prove, and I have no time for fables. If you feel the weight of this world crushing your spirit, I invite you to sit with me and listen until the end. Come a little closer. Sit here, by the warmth of this fire. Old age has a way of leaving us cold, doesn't it? Even when the sun is shining brightly outside, the bones seem to carry the weight of a winter that never leaves. My names and titles no longer matter. Today, to you, I am simply Matteo, a man who spent 8 decades shaping wood, but who only discovered who the true master carpenter was when my own breath left me. Look closely at these hands. They are like ancient maps, don't you think? Every scar is a saw cut. Every callus is a piece of furniture I helped assemble in my workshop. For decades, I was the man of the square and the chisel, the one who mastered oak and cedar. I thought I was strong. I thought I understood what a solid foundation was. But that gray Tuesday, I felt like one of those abandoned cabins you see on the side of the road. You know those wooden houses that time slowly bends, where the beams can no longer carry the weight of the roof, and the windows rattle with every autumn breeze. I was exactly that, a worn-out tent, faded by the sun and battered by the rain. Tired, so tired that even the simple act of blinking felt like an effort I no longer had to give. I was lying in that hospital bed in one of those white, impersonal rooms that seem to want to erase our story before we leave. The sheet felt rough against my legs, like sandpaper on skin, now as thin as rice paper. The smell, that scent of metal, chlorine, and disguised death, trying to hide the trace of farewell. I wasn't afraid, you know. What I felt was a deep exhaustion that seemed to rise from the marrow of my bones. I thought I knew God. I was a religious man, understand me. I had my old hymn book. I knew the Psalms by heart. I never missed Sunday service. But looking back now, I realize he was kept on the highest shelf of my soul, like an expensive tool one respects greatly, but rarely uses for the hard work of daily life. I believed in him, yes, but I did not know him. He was a concept, not a friend. There was a wall clock in the room, an old thing, its glass yellowed with age. The pendulum swung back and forth, slowly, making a dry, rhythmic echo with every passing second. Tick, tock, tick. That metallic sound was my only clock. It was the rhythm of the little time I had left. I lay there, hypnotized, counting the seconds, feeling my chest tighten more and more, as if one of those massive oak logs I used to carry with pride in my youth had been placed with all its dead weight right on top of my heart. It was an immense burden, a physical pressure that left no room for a final breath, nor for a prayer for help. Suddenly, the air seemed to turn solid. It wasn't just the lack of oxygen in my lungs. It was as if the entire world had become too heavy for my tired body to hold. I saw, as if in a dream, the doctors rushing in, a blur of white coats, the harsh sound of metal wheels rolling across the cold ceramic floor. Their voices, they seemed to come from far away, as if underwater, muffled, distant, like echoes lost in a deep cave. "We're losing him. Pressure's gone. Get the defibrillator now," someone shouted near my ear, but the voice didn't feel like it belonged to me. And me? I just wanted to say everything was okay. I wanted to explain that the old carpenter was just putting down his tools, that the shift had been long, and the body was too worn out. But my voice would not obey. My eyes, already losing focus, fixed one last time on that wall clock. Tick, tock. The interval between the sounds stretched, becoming eternal. The world around me lost its brightness, turning gray, then sinking into absolute darkness. Tick, tock, and then silence. But not an empty silence. It was a silence with weight, with presence, a silence that vibrated like a cello note resonating inside the chest. I felt something gently release at the base of my neck, like a silk thread snapping under the weight of a single drop of dew. There was no pain. There was only a snap, a delicate pop, like a bird finally realizing the cage door has been open after 80 years of staring at the bars. In that exact millisecond, as the heart monitor beside me let out that long, sharp, continuous tone, the sound that tells men the shift is over, I perceived something that would change everything I believed about eternity. The tent had finally collapsed. The fabric had been torn from top to bottom, and I was no longer inside it. You know, my son, what happened next is something human words, no matter how beautiful, try to describe but always fail. Imagine you spent your whole life wearing heavy iron armor under a blazing sun, and suddenly someone unfastens the last clasp, and it simply falls to the ground. It was like that. I was no longer in the bed. I was above it, near the ceiling, floating like a wood shaving carried away by a breeze. I looked down and saw that body, the body of old Mateo. It looked so small, so fragile. I saw the doctor pressing on my chest with open hands, sweat running down his forehead. I saw the nurse holding one of those IV bags, her eyes fixed on the monitor that was now just a flat, silent green line. Strange. I felt immense pity for that man down there, but it was the pity one feels for an old coat, worn at the elbows and stained by time, which served well through winter, but is no longer needed. The weight of the wood I carried for 80 years, the chronic fatigue in my joints, the arrhythmia that made my heart feel like a frightened bird, all of it stayed down there, tied to gravity. For the first time in decades, I felt light, not just physically, but light in soul. The hospital room began to lose its sharpness. The colors of the walls dissolved. The frantic sounds of beeping and medical commands turned into a distant murmur, like a party happening in another house, far away. And the clock, that ticking which had been my countdown of agony, stopped. Or rather, I stepped out of time. I didn't pass through a door. I was simply drawn, not by a violent force, but by an irresistible invitation. I entered a kind of twilight, but it was not the darkness we fear on earth. It was not emptiness. It was a darkness like black velvet, warm and welcoming. I smelled something. Oh, my son, what a fragrance! Like dry earth receiving the first summer rain, mixed with the perfume of flowers I had never seen in any garden of this world. And there was music, but not music played by instruments. It was as if silence itself were singing, a deep vibration passing through what I now was, as if every atom of my soul were being tuned by a master luthier. Was I in a tunnel? Perhaps. It felt more like a passage, a veil growing thinner as I moved forward. I had no feet, yet I walked. I had no eyes, yet I saw with a clarity that made the midday sun seem like a dim lamp. In the distance of that gentle twilight, a point appeared, a spark of gold. It grew and grew, not like a blinding light, but like a revealing one. You know that moment when you wake from a nightmare and realize you're safe in your room and dawn is breaking through the window. It felt exactly like that, awakening from a long, long sleep. The light didn't come from a lamp or a star. It seemed alive. It had a frequency, a warmth that didn't burn the skin, but embraced the heart. It was a light that knew my name, a light that knew every board I planed, every mistake I hid, every tear I shed silently into my pillow as a widower. I was crossing the boundary. The cold of the emergency room was behind me. The fear of judgment had been swallowed by a peace that, well, Scripture says it surpasses all understanding, and now I know that is no metaphor. It is the purest truth. I was no longer the tired carpenter. I was a son returning home after a long shift. And the horizon, the horizon turned golden, a color that does not exist in the rainbow of men. I was reaching the shore of something immense, something I had spent 80 years trying to build with wood and nails, yet it was already there, waiting for me, made of pure glory. I was about to see what no eye has ever seen, and my heart, which had stopped down there, up here, was beginning to beat for the first time. And then that light I saw in the distance was not just a glow, it was a person. He was there. You know, my son, all my life I imagined this moment with a chill down my spine. I thought I would meet a stern judge, seated on a white marble throne, holding a thick book, ready to charge me for every crooked joint and every harsh word I spoke in my workshop. But what I found, what I found has no name that can fit in a man's mouth. He was not on a throne. He was in a garden, and he felt like home. I don't know how else to explain it. That sigh you let out when you step into your own house after 10 years away, it was that, multiplied by eternity. His eyes, like liquid sapphire, deep as the ocean, but warm like a fireplace on a snowy night. And when he looked at me, I did not feel small. I did not feel unclean. For the first time in 84 years, I felt understood, fully known and fully loved. Nothing was hidden. He knew every scar on these hands, every secret in the basement of my soul, every selfish moment in my loneliness. And the miracle is this: he saw it all, every broken piece of me, and his gaze remained one of such tenderness that it undid me completely. There was no interrogation. There was a reunion of a father with a son who had been lost along the way. We began to walk, and as we walked, my life did not pass like a movie on a screen. It flowed like waves of light around us. He showed me 1964, a frosty morning. I saw myself giving my wool jacket to a boy trembling by the roadside. I had completely forgotten that, my son. I thought it was meaningless, but not to him. I felt the warmth of that gesture returning to me, as if God himself were wearing that jacket. But he also showed me the moments when my pride as a craftsman outweighed my compassion. I saw how I looked down on men who lacked my skill. I felt the cold weight of that pride, and in that exact moment, something inside me broke forever. All the importance I gave to the furniture I built, the roofs that stood for decades, my reputation as a tough, self-sufficient man, it all melted like wax near fire. Do you know what remained? Only the gratitude of being loved for who I am, not for what I did with my hammer. I understood I had spent my life trying to build a foundation of wood, when the only foundation that matters is His grace. My pride as a carpenter was just sawdust. His forgiveness is not like ours, which we give but secretly hold on to. His forgiveness is an ocean that washes the stain away and clothes you in something new. I felt clean, so clean it was as if I had never touched the dirt of this world. And the place, my son, oh, the place. The colors were alive, breathing. The grass beneath our feet vibrated with the sound of praise. Holy, holy, holy. It was as if every atom of that landscape was in an endless celebration. I saw the trees, the wood I had worked so much on earth. There they shone, as if they carried their own light. I understood, with a burning heart, that I was never the master of the work. I was only an apprentice, trying to imitate His beauty. I wanted to stay. I would have stayed 10,000 years just listening to His voice, which resonated in my chest like a golden bell. The peace was so dense I could almost touch it. There was no more pain in my back, no more exhaustion of 80 years, no more fear of darkness, because I was in the source of all light. But suddenly the walk stopped. The Lord stood before me and placed His hand on my shoulder. The weight of that hand was not of oak. It was a weight of glory, a mark of fire that said I belonged to Him forever. He looked deep into my soul, and without moving His lips, His voice resounded within me, gentle but undeniable. Mateo, my son, it is not yet your time to live here. I wanted to protest. I wanted to cling to that light, to beg not to return to that old body and that hospital room that smelled of chlorine. But His gaze was a command of pure love. You must return, He said, and His voice was like many waters. You have a task. Go and tell them the light is real. Tell them love is greater than death. And before I could say a single word, the garden began to fade. The music of the trees became a hum, and that sacred silence was invaded by a familiar metallic rhythmic sound, the sound of time running again. Tick. The fall was abrupt. It was like falling from a cliff of clouds into a sea of molten lead. Sound returned first, like an intruder kicking down the door of a silent house. That cursed clock on the wall. Tick, tock. Each strike of its pendulum felt like a nail being hammered, fastening me, inch by inch, back into this old body. I felt the weight before the pain. I felt gravity pulling me down, crushing me against the rough mattress, as if I were wearing armor made of wet iron. The air in the room, which I hadn't noticed before, now felt like icy needles entering my lungs. And the smell, the smell of ozone and burned flesh. I knew, even before opening my eyes, they had used the defibrillator. They had dragged me back by force, kicking open the door of eternity to pull me into the workshop again. I opened my eyes, and the hospital light was gray, dead, dull. I saw the doctor's face inches from mine, pale, sweat dripping from his chin, eyes wide as if he had seen a ghost. Little did he know the ghost was me, and I had just come from a place where his light would seem like darkness. "He's back," someone shouted in the hallway. "We've got a pulse." I wanted to cry, "My son," not from joy, but from longing. The longing for that light was a physical pain, greater than the shock in my chest. I felt like a giant trying to fit into a child's shoe. My soul had expanded, had tasted infinity, and now it was trapped again in 84 years of fragile bones and aching joints. But then I remembered his touch on my shoulder. I remembered that voice like many waters telling me I had a task. From that day on, the fear of death died within me. It simply vanished. How can I fear the door when I've already seen what lies beyond the room? People run desperately, gathering wood and treasures, building higher walls, as if the end were a black hole. But I know the truth. I carry this secret like a fire in my bones that this old skin can barely hold. Look at my garden out there. The flowers are beautiful, aren't they? But now, when I look at them, I see only a sketch, a child's chalk drawing, trying to copy a masterpiece. This world is just the waiting room, the entry hallway. Real life, the life that vibrates and sings, is right there, behind that veil we insist on believing is a concrete wall. You know, I spent my life building furniture for men. I built foundations that time will tear down. But now, what matters are the foundations we build within. Every act of kindness, every whispered prayer in the kitchen, every time you choose love over pride, that is what you are sending ahead. That is what your eternal home is made of. Come closer. Look into the eyes of this old carpenter. I don't have much time left on this shift here on earth, and the sound of that clock no longer frightens me. I know that soon the silk thread will break again, and this time it will be forever. But you are still here. And what I need you to understand, with all the urgency of one who has touched glory, is that you are loved, more than your mind can imagine. Every tear you cried in secret he kept. Every stumble that filled you with shame, he already forgave at the cross. He is not waiting for you to be perfect to love you. He loves you so that you can finally begin to become who he created you to be. Do not wait for your heart to stop before you begin to live for the one who keeps it beating. Do not spend your days carrying wood to build empires of sawdust. The veil is thin, my son, as thin as the breath you are taking now. Live in such a way that when your time comes to cross that twilight, you do not meet a stranger, but a friend who says, "Come in, I've left the light on for you. Now go, the night is coming." But for those who know the owner of the light, the sun never truly sets. I will stay here, feeling the warmth of the fire, waiting for my final call. And this time, this time, I will not protest. I will simply return home. Join our community of faith by subscribing so we can walk together. And please, share your prayers or thoughts in the comments below. Let this be the moment you stop fearing the darkness and begin seeking the light.